So it's a pleasure to have Professor Jyothi Krishnan of the Center for Creative Learning at IIT Gandhinagar give the next edition of the MSc Conversation series of talks, which is going to be on board games for leisure, education and research. So Jyothi, as her bio in her webpage says, grew up solving puzzles and reading Martin Gardner's books. Not realizing that recreational maths provided any scope for a career, she pursued her other love of mechanics and collected a B.Tech from NIT Calicut, an MS from IIT Madras, and a PhD from UC Berkeley. She has worked as a programmer, a bridge engineer, a research mathematician, and a school teacher. Having been introduced to the world of modern board games during her PhD, she realized that it was a way to make fairly complicated mathematical reasoning accessible to a large number of children, so she created a job playing games with kids in an alternative school in Bangalore. After running her game lab for 4 years, she discovered like-minded people at the Center for Creative Learning, where she is thrilled to be making a living playing games and solving puzzles. At the center, she creates games and looks after math content. So without any further ado, let me invite Professor Krishnan to present this. And it's going to be a highly interactive talk, so please feel free to stop at any point to, either ask a question or comment. I think she would like this to be as interactive as possible.
Thank you.
And afterwards, we have, as usual, high tea at the coffee lounge at the other end of the corridor. So, Sirishka.
Thank you. All right, so I didn't really know how to pitch this because I figured, for all I know, all of you play all these board games and I'm saying nothing new to you. Or this is entirely new. In either case, hopefully this will be fun, but stop me if either I'm boring you to death or none of it makes any sense. Almost everyone tells me they've played some board game, but they probably don't want to keep doing it because are the games here, has anybody here played any of these games? So there's everything I could think of: Ludo, Connect 4, Snakes and Ladders, Scrabble, Jenga, Othello, Palamari, Mastermind, chess, backgammon, Monopoly, Peg Solitaire, which I spent a delightful summer solving, and some pen and paper games. So some, any of these, all of these, none of these? Look. That's a good selection. Okay, so the thing is that I grew up a bit like doing mathematics up until the 10th. They were fun, but I don't know that I would have kept doing it, right? So I felt then somewhere, okay, so if I were to ask, I guess everyone's at least, even if you've not played it, Snakes and Ladders is a familiar object, right? But what's the thing that stands out as a difference? So, I mean, anything is fine, yeah? Yeah, exactly. So that one, I don't know, it's not really a game, it's playing itself. It's kind of like an automa, right? In some ways, the dice are doing whatever they do, and people go up and down ladders. And chess is the other extreme. You spend years learning it. So in terms of, there's differences in terms of, maybe it's luck and strategy, a number of people who can play, experienced players having an advantage over people just starting out, and the time it takes, even though, I don't know, Snakes and Ladders takes an awfully long time for what it is. So anyway, so what we're going to do today, however, is to talk about the world of modern board games. So this is home as of yesterday. So there are about 154 board games there. Yes, none of these are video games. They are all physical objects. They're all games you can put on a table and play. Some of them have boards, some of them do not. Most of them, so most of them have very, very little luck. So I am not a big fan. Chess needs a lot of study. Some of these games too. Okay, so what I discovered while I spent, for all the PhD students here, I spent too much time playing games, horrifying my advisor and spending way more time thinking about games than I should have. I also discovered that I can make anybody play. So on the top there is my mother, my grandmother, and my daughter. And typically when the four of us get together, one generation picks on another generation and things don't go very well. When we play games, we're very happy people. We're all super competitive. We all like strategy. We play well together. But I can also get my in-laws who've never played a game in their life down there to play with me. So when I figured this, that I could probably get anyone to at least once try out a game with me, so I decided to go off and teach at a school and play games. Okay, so but let me talk a little bit about what we're going to try to talk about today. So to establish that games aren't necessary. Yes, there are games for children. Children should play games, but maybe there are things for adults as well. There are things. And what I'm going to focus on, there are some wonderful games like Go that are very old, but I'm not going to. What I'm going to try to talk about is games designed mostly from the late 90s to today. Because that's the context of this conversations. So perhaps the most familiar strategy games to all of us are things like chess and maybe Othello. Has anybody here played? I think it's called Reversi or Othello. So there are takes on these. I'm not going to touch upon party games, social games, and abstract games after this slide. So let me just tell you that these games exist. They're wonderful as objects of study. So maybe right at the end, we'll go back and talk about analysis and complexity when you work with stuff like this. But for the most part, we won't go here. What you see in fact is actually, but if somebody does want to go look them up, that's Chris Berm. Chris Berm had this idea that when you play chess, it takes a lot of time to set up a game. So the early game, the mid game, the late game. What he's trying to do when he designed is to get you straight to mid game, right? So you start out, he builds these very, very beautiful little abstract objects that really get you straight to the tough part of the strategy. So this is just as an introduction to games that exist. Okay, so Monopoly yet is another game that probably you've all heard of. Yeah? What do you think of when you think Monopoly? How does it think? Nobody here has played Monopoly. You have? Yes, so what would you have games for you? Okay. Now, so the thing about Monopoly, I'm kidding, but I think Saxon's Acquire, designed in 1964, is what should have been Monopoly. So it's about like Scrabble, you've got a set of tiles in front of you. You're trying to place them on the board, invest in hotel chains that will become big things, and then buy stock in them and get rich. But here is a game where you have some control over what you're doing, and you actually... So this is a game that, again, you can play with... It's not very rules intensive, but it's still got a certain amount of strategy in it. The other there are some very interesting pen and paper games going all the way back to Conway, Bergkamp and Guy, but also Saxon has designed games which don't need anything at all. So if you look this up, a gamut of games is just pen and pencil games and dice games. It's got nothing, you need hardly any material. If we have time, we can play something from it. Let's see. But the story I actually want to tell you is about these sprawling battlers. Okay, so this is a game often called Misery Farm, in which it's Agricola. So so this game has no luck after the initial setup. So what you start out is you're given some cards and you're trying to run a farm. So this movement, the Euro game movement as it's called, came out of Germany after World War II. So Germany right after World War II still wants to play something competitive, which has been really turned off aggressive war games, right? So they are trying to develop a new genre of games at this point, where people are engaging with some sort of simulation, but these simulations are not warlike. They're neither abstract nor are they entirely warlike. So what you're doing here is you've got all these little actions that allow you to collect stuff. It's not like the video game. So the thing that I'm having some trouble conveying without getting you to play is that it's not quite like the Age of Empires kind of thing where you get stuff and you... this is much more dependent on what you opt to do. There is really no random things happen at all. It is you playing other people. Okay, I think I'm going really fast in the hope that I get to play with you. The other side of this Euro movement is what I'm not insulting it. This is what American games call themselves, right? I think this is in response to people saying that Euro games are these thoughtful, strategic objects. The Americans were like, well, we like our big simulation monsters, beat up people kind of games. So this movement is called the Ameritrash movement, and they're typically very thematic, and they, have a whole story going on. And okay, during and after the book, this I don't know which edition. There's an edition that came out last year, but the earlier one I think is way before any of the films. I don't know if there were any films predating the Timothy Chalamet, and so I don't know whether this is then maybe there was a movie before this as well. But here's what I actually wanted out of it. So when I was growing up, one of the things I actually believed about myself is that I cannot learn history. I went and failed my 10th standard history exam. But the thing with contextualizing it via games. So I played this game called Twilight Struggle. What you're looking at is a map of the world, I guess, circa 45. And you're playing either as the Russians or the Americans, trying to essentially do what the Americans do best, trying to form little power structures here and there, taking over small regions. Both of them, both parties in this game. So it's a tug-of-war game. The first two either end us in military. So down here is nuclear threat. So right up there is a space race. So they're both trying to go off into space. It's not a historical simulation. What you have is events. Like I like this card. So I pulled out Margaret Thatcher as one of the cards. And you can play her for influence. So this means the Americans, you can play this card to allow the Americans to put down some influence somewhere. You can also play it as an event. This particular thing happens. And in this way too, you're able to recreate a historical, but the idea of what could have happened. So perhaps the Russians win the Cold War in this version of the game. So these are designed actually by historians. Yeah, anyway, so these industries. The Russians in the US too. Yeah, I should have said that. Thank you. So there's a China card. So you can play China as so you can play the China card, literally. Hi. Okay, so every time the US gets a point, it gets pulled toward that side. When the Russians get a point, it gets pulled back to the red side. So it's not you gain points, I gain points. It's a tug-of-war kind of system. First to 20 wins a game. So you have to, and it's balanced very interestingly to be that if early in the game, the Russians have an advantage. As history plays out, it's if you're not quick enough on your feet as a player, Russia wins. But so the Russian player wants to really rush a victory. The American player wants to wait it out, and then it slowly tips towards. And I think the idea of how you take actual historical ideas and condense them into games is quite fascinating. I don't know about the flame, but even the idea of how you think about it to me is quite fascinating. Oh no. Okay, so the skill involved here is really, this is a game that actually really benefits from your knowing what happens, right? So the idea of, so the more knowledge you have of actual events, these really, really helpful. So repeat playing, and what you want to do is leverage certain things that you know are probably going to happen. So, there'll be a Cuban Missile Crisis. You can, depending on who you are, you can choose to let it happen or not. Right, so there are no blocks, it's all card driven. So the only thing on this are the cards. Okay, so the other game that I found fascinating on the left is a game about Afghanistan, designed by a CIA analyst called Volker Runke. This game was used as a CIA training module and is now a published game. I found the ideas in this game fascinating, but my politics never let me play it. So what's happening here is a huge amount of asymmetry. So if you're playing as an insurgent, what you require in terms of power versus what you need if you are in power versus if you're an outside power trying to influence this. So there are 4 different factions playing very, very different games, war games, right? On the right is equally fast. So these things are called counterinsurgency war games. So if you look them up, I have some slides if somebody wants right at the end. But on the right is another version of a coin game designed by Cole Worley, who I'll talk about in a minute. And here it's set in a woodland. So the birds, they used to have control over the woodland. The cats have pushed them back into a corner. The mice are these little revolutionaries who are trying to create trouble wherever they can. And the raccoons, they're just mercenaries. They will align with anyone. So the way this game works is that all 4 of these players are playing 4 entirely different games. The rules are different. The victory conditions are different. What you need to do in order to play this game, you have to know how 4 different groups of people actually think. You have to learn 4 entirely separate games. So I've played. So I have not really played a Distant Flames. If you ask me anything about it, I've read the rule set. I've read too many rule sets. But the one on the right, and then I want to talk a little bit. I want to actually take a few minutes to talk. You can play with 3 or 4 players. You can get the raccoon out of there. There is a 2-player variant with just the cats and the birds, but it's not much fun. It's best with 3 or 4. Okay, so some of us may or may not have published our PhD research work. Some of us turned it into a bunch of wonderful games. So Cole did a PhD in rhetoric. I think it's from Austin. And the outcome, so he was studying the narrative dimensions of empire, space and time, British imaginary, 1819 to 1855. And the outcome of this work is that he managed to produce 3 of these actually amazing games, which I'll talk about just a little bit. On the top is Pax Pamir, which is again about Afghanistan, but it's set in a different context. If you were a native Afghan, what do you imagine your state to be? So it is really about franchise, this is a cartoon from Punch on the cover, where the Afghan is flanked by the Russian bear and the British lion. And it's about power struggles during the Great Game in Afghanistan. And on the left is an infamous traffic about opium trading down the Silk Road. And on the right is John Company, about the establishment of the British East India Company. So you're playing as purely mercenary factions, and it's just about trying to make money off the Raj. Okay, so it's I just wanted to, again, to any students here. This edition of Pax Pamir, I don't know if that color says anything to anyone. It's the color of the voter's ink. So the attention to detail here, the story he's telling is about franchise, about self-determination, so he's making a rhetorical argument through a board game. So I mean, these are not the kinds of games but as you can see, it's also got a little bit of. So you're imagining a native Russian. So as an Afghan, you're an Afghan, a tribesman, right? So you're imagining a whole tribe voting together, and you're trying to align with some faction. That faction could be Afghan, it could be British, it could be Russian. So your aim is to try to get your group to victory through assassination attempts, coups. There's all sorts of stuff happening in that little game. When there is a reckoning, like there are some stages in the game where you check who is in control. If your faction is in power, the most loyalty to that faction wins the game. So that's good. I should have said that most of these games, so in that set of games I showed you, I have everything between 20 minutes with a 4-year-old and spreadsheets out for 24 hours. But these games that I'm showing you are mostly an hour to 2 hours long. So Pax Pamir, my brother and I can knock it off in about 45 minutes. Yeah. So these aren't very, yeah. But that's a very intense 45 minutes, yes. Rhetoric. So this is a thesis in rhetoric. Yeah. Doesn't say, yeah. Thanks. I want to just, the coins are, okay. The coins are written, and actually he hired someone who spoke the native language of the time to write a sentence in Dari, which could have been valid at the time. So there's so all I want to really say is historical detail, political arguments, other kinds of narrative arguments can be made using games, not just the more mathematical ones, which we'll get to. Now we will progress into the more mathematical games. So this is actually my favorite designers. They started designing while doing their PhDs, mathematicians both. Roads and Boats is a pure logistics game. But what I love about them is that their view of design is that if you can't lose a game on the first turn, that's a superfluous turn. Why have a first turn? Get rid of it, start the game one step forward. Right? So these are very tightly designed. So these are also shortish games. Roads and Boats is not short, it's very long. But Zimbabwe is about an hour, Food Chain Magnate's about an hour. An hour to 2 hours. Yes, okay. I'll talk a little bit about what it means to play a game like this in the next slide. But what they're trying to do is take an abstract game that's kind of almost Go or chess-like in its cleanliness, in terms of rules, clarity, and turn it into something which actually has more going on, more of a story to tell. Its antiquity is actually played on a central board where, you are trying to build, you're trying to use resources, you're trying to plant new cities, and then pollution. So all those little shits, when you do this, the game tries to get you back because you start polluting your environment. And what each player also has an individual city board into which they're playing this polyomino game of fitting. So that's the main board. Each one of these is a city. So this little thing here is a city, which each player is now zooming into and building. So there's a university with a faculty of theology, biology, and then there's some carps and stuff. So essentially, you can zoom in and see your own city. So you're playing two games. You're playing your own individual build your city game, and where the city is placed in the larger universe. Oh, is that an excellent question, because when you start this game, there is no way to win it. So this particular game starts out by there is no victory condition. Each player builds a cathedral to a particular saint, which determines their victory condition. Okay, so perhaps one player's object is to, have every kind of university, to have a university that has everything. Somebody else is resource heavy. But you can decide what victory means to you in this game. Okay, so I'm just trying to show you different sorts of things that can be done with. Oh, there is a winner once you build your cathedral. So supposing I play my game and I never build a cathedral and choose who I'm worshipping, then I'm not in contention to win. But you could build your cathedral and meet your victory conditions, terminate the game and win. It's different for each of us. So I am worshipping maybe Santa Maria, and what I need to do is have lots of resources and lots of buildings. You could be doing somebody else. That's perfectly fine. So there's finite resources because you're all playing on a common city where there is wood and there is brick. And so you can actually completely mess your environment out and find you cannot do these things. Okay, so now before we get to mathematical games, I wanted to talk a little bit of games as objects of rehabilitation. So this is specifically out of a conversation that one of the critics I listened to, a podcaster named Michael Walker, had a stroke recently. And he was prescribed some exercises and he mapped them onto specific games and found the specific kinds of fine motor and memory things or things he was being asked to do, he could do via games. So I want to show you, I've shown you one spectrum of very heavy, very narrative heavy games. There are also games that can be used in a minute in the classroom, but right now for physical dexterity. So there's a game there that's asking you to stack in a particular way, a game that's asking you to pick up tiny things using pincers, the sorts of things that are typically asked of people when they are asked to make tinker blocks and stuff in rehabilitation. There's also similar games that can be used for memory. I've used some of these in the classroom as well, so children struggle a little bit with, so we can talk about them. It's with several aspects. I had some neurodivergent kids, and there are things here that are useful even for children, but also they're useful in rehabilitation. Okay, so talking of children, so I tried to anonymize. These are older kids, and they said I couldn't photograph them. They are not actually blindfolded. This is me trying to. Yes, I used to run a lab in a school for 4 years where I got kids to play games. Children from the 2nd standard till the 8th standard officially, but I taught 11th and 12th, so we played a lot of games as well. They would come in once a week. We would just play, and then we would try to formulate questions in the classroom around the games we play. So we would try not to say math or anything except let's play in this lab. But afterwards, it provides them one more, that's what we'll talk about on Monday, one more way to think about where you can use mathematics. Okay, so this is now the games for I've done, in my opinion, done leisure, and now we're on to education. I know I'm going really fast, but the current work I'm doing involves a very large-scale intervention where we're talking to several lakh children in what are called Kasturba Gandhi Balika Vidyalaya. So these are kids who are in government interventions to prevent them from dropping out of school, middle school girls, and we do stuff with them. Amongst them, here are some pictures of kids playing games. I mean, I don't know, this is a conversation series, so whatever, putting enough out there that we can talk after. Yeah. Sure. So in this, okay, so when I used to do it in the classroom, I used to then follow it up with very specific mathematical questions. For this particular project, they just play. I do make them a few questions that do sneak some math in there, but because this is very large scale and very at a distance, I don't know what the follow through is. The fact that they're playing, and I've looked at some of the things they're doing, they're playing coherently, to me that itself is a win. Whether they can follow it up with a math worksheet, I do not know. Right, so what is the aim? The aim is to get them to play at this point. This is true. Well, okay, so I almost call this talk, Can Fun and Learning Coexist? But I realize that I don't believe that you need games to make learning fun. But I do believe that that games are one way to, so I am very happy not, anyway, so it's a tough one. So in terms of, I also don't believe in transfer. So if they play chess, I know they're probably not going to do a worksheet tomorrow. But if I find the game that allows me to ask them a question on something specific to their work, so we did, yeah, right. So I don't know if I answered the question that you asked me. Oh, we teach it. So we teach it, we play it. So in an online session, we actually teach it. It's not always games. So there's several sessions in which they do science, they do math. In these particular events, we taught a game and played it in front of them and then gave them, these are photos and videos that they sent us afterward of them doing it. Yeah, okay. So then also I got to give, this is again, if in case this is something anyone's interested in, I got to make 50 games that I could send into classrooms across the country, some PM stream project it is. And yeah, so open source, freely available, hopefully nice looking objects going into government classrooms, government schools. So we don't know. PM3 schools go from kindergarten to 12th standard. I picked stuff That I've fixed some language games, some social games, lots of mathematical games, and I've tried to make it from my teachings that work across. It's a little bit of an overwhelming box, so I'll have to find a way to tell teachers, I don't, it's very much a nascent object. Hopefully it'll go out in a month or two. Oh, yeah, okay, so finally mathematics. I won't take very much time, I promise. I love this quote from Conway. He says, I used to feel guilty in Cambridge that I spent all day playing games while I was supposed to be doing mathematics. Then I discovered the surreal numbers, we can talk about those if you want, and realized that playing games is mathematics. So this is of course not the kind of games you've seen so far. This is Conway talking about two-player finite combinatorial games typically, right? So here are a few of them. Again, I assume the aim is to just, okay, 5:40. I'm going to go a few minutes over time. So yeah, okay. So have you seen any of these? I've got playable links to most of them. So if anyone has questions, we can go play some of them. Well, so this one, Hex. So Gale and Nash have some nice, so it's really, there's a fixed point theorem behind this one. So there's, okay, so in Hex, what you're trying to do is a blue player, on your turn, you can color in any one of these hexes in your color. Players take turns, play. The blue player wants to go from the blue edge to the blue edge, and the red player wants to go from the red edge to the red edge. That's it. So that's all the rules. It's got very interesting mathematics association if you want to talk about it. It's just called Hex. And it's actually probably due to someone called Pete Hine, the Soma cube person. So, but it was popularized by Nash. The story is that he played it because he's John Nash. Yes, the game theory Nash. And because it was apparently played on the bathroom tiles, it's sometimes also called John. But not anymore. No reason. Alright. So, yeah, okay, I think maybe we will stop there. I was going to show you one more game, but I think maybe this is an actual overload of games. Okay, so do a video of that. Alright, so you can see there are two players, red and blue at this. So typically in combinatorial game theory, it's blue and red playing. What's going on now is on your turn, color in any hex you want, any hexagon inside this region in your color. So blue has gone and filled in that hexagon there. So red follows through, again fill anywhere you want on the board. The interesting thing about this game is even if I did it blindly, like if we just randomly populated this with red and blue colors, it would turn out that you cannot draw. So, right? There will be a connection. So the heuristic is that think of it as land and water, and if land is getting cut off, it's by the water, and if water is getting cut off, it's by the land. So that's a heuristic. There are nice ways to prove it. But essentially, whoever manages to form a path wins the game.
Because the name for this,
Oh, wait, does that not have a directionality though? Right, okay. This is just, yeah. This is the end of the game. Blue has won because they've managed to connect the left edge to the right edge. Huh? Yes. At least for one time I can beat you. After that you'll cotton on. Right. Study? No. Red is disconnected. Exactly. So red's path has come up to here and then goes off. I mean, you can see much more complicated patterns in this one. No. So Nash, I think as a grad student or maybe an early career faculty, was playing and Nash discovered either heard of it from Hine and popularized it or independently developed it. We don't know. Is that obvious? No, actually. I mean, to prove it is not. She knows I'm teaching this semester. So, is it obvious other than the actual proof of it calls for a little bit of, I think Gale does it the graph theoretically. I think Nash does it using a fixed point theorem. I think he uses Brouwer to do this. But so there are different proofs. Again, the hand wavy version is someone must be cutting the other party off. Right? So there is to be connected with limits.
Do you see what the more easy was?
No. Yeah, okay. So there is an isomorphic version where you play on just the centers. So there's a version where you play on a Y, but I don't know what's been proved on that version. It should be. No, that's the okay. So this Nash has a very beautiful strategy stealing argument here. That this is a game in which making a mark is always to your advantage. Again, I went to do a hand wavy version. Alright, making a mark is to your advantage, right? Supposing the second player has a strategy in this game, okay? So now what the first player does is they make an arbitrary mark that has nothing to do with anything, makes the second player now effectively first player and employs the second player's winning strategy. And if that strategy ever required you to play in that arbitrary place where you had initially, well, you play somewhere else because you've already got that mark. So this is a very often used argument in combinatorial game theory. It's called strategy stealing. And I cannot remember what I was answering. Can whoever asked me that say that again? Sorry. Is it always 11 by 11? Okay, so even though we know that there is a first player win, even it's very hard to figure out what that strategy is on a large enough board. So on a very small board, it's very, very easy to argue how to do this. 11 by 11 is a competition board where nobody can actually tell you what this wonderful strategy is. So you can't, so you know it exists, right? You'd have to do a full search to figure it out, which is competition.
Still use it there, resulting to forfeit.
Why? That's a good question. I actually don't know. I started out with comes not in Hex. I don't know where. Yeah, I'm sure this one has been. Hex is I actually should know what I don't know. I think I know it is too high. I will look and tell you. A square lattice. Okay, so I think with the square lattice you would only have 4. I don't know what. You cannot have a 4 lattice version of this, but I can't right now tell you where it would break down. It would be actually interesting to see what goes wrong, as in what becomes. It is okay. Yes, we can show that the first player has a strategy. We don't know what the strategy is. On a small enough board, it's not hard to argue how to play out. But on an 11 by 11, we don't. I mean, maybe exactly correct. So if maybe a computer could suddenly play an 11 by 11, but I think it must be. I'm scared to assign a complexity class to it because again, I know that it is complex, but I don't know that 11 by 11 a computer could not play. Probably it could. Probably would have to. Yes, because we don't know what the optimal strategy is. So if we could find it,
then we just sign we can where it's just you actually.
So I
even do something.
So it's supposed to be an advantage for whites. This is true. I don't know. Because it's got several different rules going on. I don't know how. I mean, clearly something must have been done when now there are AIs that play chess, right? So to some extent, it must be employing some strategy. I don't know whether that is just a large database of moves that it's searching through. Everybody here probably knows this better than how chess serves.
Are that two men really weird? But you do there's a nuisance so.
I know.
Families and children and so on. So you get started with and they get addicted to use.
So honestly, I know very, very little about video games. Somewhere along the way I played, they give me a headache. So I not played very many video games. I know very little about it. The game you saw kids playing, there is a computer implementation. Does that count as a video game? I don't know. If you're talking about first-person shooter kind of, so are you talking about the grand racing kind of?
Yeah, sorry.
That is a different. Well, there because the computer is playing against you, right? Here it is So I mean, I don't know what is. Not to make any kind of value judgment on it, but it's a different style of play, and I honestly have no idea what most video is.
Is it antiquity?
Yeah.
So that has a video game, like exact same.
No, okay. So there is something called Board Game Core. Oh, wait. Okay. So there is an online implementation of exactly Antiquity at a place called Board Game Core. No, Civ is different. I actually wondered whether that was one step too many. But Civ... Civ is... So this one, Civilization, has both an online version and the video game. They are slightly different because in order to change it to this format, there is no computer to play against you. So the way you design, so Francis Tresham, actually, that's Francis Tresham, he managed to convert Civilization into a board game. So there is a board game and a video game version of Civilization.
Is that the same as Antiquity?
No. Yeah, I know. They're similar in the sense that you're building cities, but in terms of the actual mechanics, they're somewhat different. It's very, very hard without saying let's play. So I really don't know how to. They're in a similar family in the sense that they are sprawling civilization games, but they're different in terms of design. No, because I don't know enough about Civ to tell you. Antiquity I've played several times, so I can tell you a little bit about strategy there.
Try Antiquity.
Yes, the Board Game Core. So there's a place where it's implemented, but it's this very old and ugly, folky website. So then, click.
The card games are very popular among them.
Correct. So I really wondered whether to do a whole section on card games. So then I thought, it was not to... Oh, well, I don't know that that's necessary. There are card games and there are card games, and then there are board games and there are board games. I don't know that it's necessarily... I don't know. Yes, there are card games that involve gambling. I grew up playing a lot of something called Irvitator. So, yeah, which is a trick-taking game where you're playing with phone. I don't know that it means... Even gambling was not part of this thing, at least. Yes, I've heard this. Yes. Oh, because I see.
Shades. So, just wondering, there are set of things one has to satisfy for it to be okay?
This becomes a little subjective. It's a little bit like asking the same for literature. Objectively, it can't be broken. So, so Bob Hearn, who studied with Eric Devane at MIT, has a thesis where he claims that a good game directly links to its complexity. I think that may be a little simplistic, so I don't know that I can draw such a direct... But perhaps it seems intuitive that there's some relationship, that it should not be something... Good mathematical games are where I can analyze them, but fun games to play are where I can't. Right? So I think... I don't know if that answers them. I think it should not become tedious. So I guess it depends on what complexity means in the content, which is where it becomes a subjective experience, as with literature or something, where what is good could be. Like, for instance, if somebody else did this, perhaps they would not show you any of these games, and it would have been an entirely different subset. These are just the games I like to play.
Yeah. So, is it in the process of playing that they're learning about math, or is after the afterwards in the discussion related to analysis of a game they are learning?
That's very...
Give the game to them and they're playing.
If you know that. Okay, so that's a tough one. So my friends in education tell me that I should never walk around claiming transfer, which is that you do one thing and you learn to do another. It is tempting to say this. They must be learning something. I think, existing, you're learning some things probably. But are you learning what the classroom curriculum wants you to learn? That would probably be a very strong claim for me to make. Some people may be making some connections, it depends. But the follow-through discussion, I think, is definitely easier if they have the experience. So if I can frame it in something where they have some instinct for doing it, that I believe does work. I can't prove it yet. We will have to do more thinking on that. But that seems likely, just playing in some people perhaps. Yeah. Toasted. Yeah. There's or if I will fall through you need to do it up. Should we have 5 minutes? Okay. Alright, so this game was designed by a couple of mathematicians at the University of Virginia, I think. It's called Digit Party. So let's just play around. I'll teach you and we'll all play, right? So what's going on here is you're going to get digits between 1 and 9 presented to you. You choose to place them anywhere you like on the board. I can't decide whether I want to teach it or just let's play together. All right, I have slides which would actually walk you through the calculations and everything. But for a minute, just trust me, we will know how to play by the end of this exercise. You get a number, you place it somewhere on the grid. You place the same digit next to itself. You form a link that is worth the value of that digit. So I put a 2 next to a 2, that's 2 points. I put a 5 next to a 5, that's 5 points. Okay? I am just going to click through and show you. Okay, so we've got a 3. I have to place it somewhere on this board. Okay. Now I've got another 9. If I put it anywhere outside of this immediate neighborhood, it's not going to give me any points at all. Anywhere there, it's equal. So what I'm going to do is if I put my cursor anywhere here, you see nothing. But here, you can see it's going to form a link. Where should I put it? Does anybody care? Huh? Diagonally. Alright, I will do that. And now I've got a 2, and then behind that, I'm going to get a 5. I'm going to put the 2 somewhere, anywhere. No, I guess 2 and 5 we don't mind, so I'm just going to put them somewhere. Okay, now I've got a 2, which I should probably put next to this. It's not going to get interesting until I get several repeats. So I guess Meena, still diagonally, or should we straight, up or straight down? I mean, so straight leftward or downward? Downward, understand. Now I have an 8 and then I have a 5. The 8 doesn't matter, it's the first state of the game. My instinct would be to put it either here or there. Shop. Alright, done. 5. So again, it's 1 in these positions. To the right. So alright, done. I've got a 1 and then I've got a 2. Camera, come for a minute. Alright, sorry guys, you can go. 5. Now it gets a little bit interesting. If I put a 5 in the same line, I'm only going to form a link. Then I get only one new one. If I put it above or below, in either of those 2 positions, I'll get 2 links. Now, if I put it above, I'm going to block that 7 off a bit. And the 3 is less valuable, even if I block it off. So I'm going to take the risk and put it down here. And I get a 7. Now, if I put it here, I don't know if I'm crowding my 8. Hard to tell. So where should I put my 7, do you think? Here? Alright, done. Now I've got a 4 and a 6. If I do that, what should I do? Here are all my options. On the left, alright. 5 or 6 hasn't shown up yet. Sticking somewhere where it doesn't trouble anyone, I guess. 2 and a 5. 2 and a 5, that's kind of a no-brainer. And now I'm stuck a little bit. I've got a 3. It's only a 3. Maybe I'll live, so I'll put my 3 here and I get a 5, I get an 8, I get a 6, I get a 4, and I get a 3. So I didn't do too terribly. What do you see? So here, in the classroom, there are several ways I could use this game. I could talk a little bit about packing, because as the number of appearances show up, square packings are good in the beginning, and then you want to actually have more circular hexagonal packings. So I could do it at a very school level. I could say, well, just calculate for me, right? Find how many links multiplied by the total number, calculate a score. I could talk about percentage. That's 91%. So what is it? 91% of what? What is my perfect board? Rearrange this to form the perfect board. Calculate the percentage on that. So I'm saying, just playing this game, did they learn anything? Well, they probably learned a little bit about that they want to keep open space near large numbers. So things like that, if I wanted to talk about uniform random number generators, I could do all sorts of stuff with a game like this, right? So I, again, do not know if I answered your question, but do they learn anything from playing this game? Maybe, maybe not. Do they learn what I want them to learn? Exactly correct. Exactly correct. Correct. And then we're working on some, exactly. So it's a whole spectrum of things you can do in the subject. What I did? Well, I think so. I just tried to keep the... Oh, well, the thing is that I don't know how to answer this. Okay, because so we're trying to... Oh, right. No, okay. 100% exhibits. Right. Well, here what I've mucked up is, perhaps if my 9 had been like that, my 3 had been like this, and I had managed to arrange my 4 like that. So the reason it's not 100% is this 3 hanging out here, and I've lost a link. So I'm missing 2 links on the 3, right? So 6 points there and another 4 points. I'm 7 points short of what I could have had. Yeah, exactly correct. Oh, no. In the sense that it's not a deterministic game. So I must account for the fact that, but I can think that I prefer to lose a link on a 3 than a link on a 9. So I can think a little bit in that way. So yeah, I mean, it's not that hard to get 100%, but you have to be lucky. So there's no way to guarantee.
To maybe ask the last question.
Right.
So, like it's a dream to turn someone's passion into actually a, job. So at what point did you realize that board game is not just something you can do for fun, but, you can turn it into, pay for the bread?
I don't think there was any grand strategy involved in anything I have ever done. It would be nice to say that I was planning this all along.
I think many of our PhD students would be interested.
No, I think no, it's actually the sad thing, whatever it is. I actually really enjoyed the work I did for my PhD. So, but yeah, exactly. So when I really wanted to do this, and like my advisor told me I'm very self-indulgent for not publishing what I should have and going off and doing this. I think I quote Oscar Wilde and end by saying that, the best sin is the self-indulgence or something along those lines. But I mean, I guess you've got to think about what you can do for the next several years, right? And I'm lucky that the thing I wanted to do has enough mathematics that I still get to do mathematics. But I'm teaching, right? So hey, I guess I'm lucky. So
on that note, let's thank the speaker.